how to overcome procrastination. This is something that a lot of us have to deal with nowadays because you've got so many things that can distract us, right? We've got access to the internet. We've got access to our cell phones. These devices, these things give us an easy out from getting the things done, digging our feet in, getting things done. And it happens to the best of us, but if it happens more often than it should, then it can actually grow into a real problem that we have to deal with. Let me explain. Research has shown that procrastination has a negative effect on our self-esteem. We don't feel good about ourselves when we put things off. And when we don't feel good about ourselves, it starts chipping away at our self-confidence. And that starts affecting our ability to govern ourselves, which leads to even more procrastination. So really, putting things off, engaging in procrastination, initiates a vicious cycle that starts to erode at your self-esteem. It starts to erode at your confidence. It starts to erode at your ability to govern yourself. And this isn't just isolated to procrastination, because research is now finding links between the behaviors of impulsivity and procrastination. Basically, what they're finding is people who tend to procrastinate, tend to behave impulsively, and vice versa. And all of that is really a reflection or a result of low self-governance. Talk about motivation to stop procrastinating. So how do we go about handling this? How do we go about putting a stop to this nagging habit of putting things off? Now, I believe the best way to do this is to really understand and to really be aware of what's going on behind the curtains. To really understand why we do what we do. Now, Tony Robbins offers a simple model that helps explain why people do what they do. And essentially, according to him, it boils down to two forces, right? It boils down to our need to avoid pain and our desire to gain pleasure. And essentially, everything that we do, all of our behaviors, can be boiled down to how these two forces take shape in our minds, right? We will choose something that we have associated more pleasure to over something that we've associated pain to, obviously, right? And even when we're not dealing with pleasure versus pain, we're dealing with pain versus pain. We will choose something that we've associated less pain to over something that we've associated more pain to, right? So for example, let's say you want to call a client. You have to call a client this one afternoon, but it's a gorgeous afternoon. It's a perfect golfing afternoon, and you just want to go out and get a round in. So what do? You say, I'll call the client tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Let's not waste the day. Let's go out and get a round of golf in, right? And for that to happen, you would have had to associate in your brain more pleasure to golfing and pain to calling the client. Right? But that's how the forces have taken shape in your mind. That doesn't necessarily happen in someone else's mind. For someone else, if they were faced with these two choices only, but let's say they hated golf, they absolutely detested golf. It's surprising, but not everyone actually enjoys golf, right? And for them, they associate more pain to golf and less pain to calling the client. So guess what they'll do? They won't golf. They'll call that client, right? It all depends on how these forces take shape in our minds. So now that we have this little bit of insight, let's get back on track here and let's talk about how we can use it to essentially eliminate procrastination. Right? So now the next time you're faced with the task that you are debating putting off, think about how the forces, think about the forces that are actually taking shape in your mind. What are you associating pain and pleasure to? Or what are you associating pain and pain to? What are you seeing as more painful and less painful when it comes to executing that particular task? And also, now that you are aware of these forces, now that you're aware of this dynamic that is going on in your mind, you have the ability to impact it. You have the ability to change and shape these forces. And the way to do that is to essentially stack up more painful associations to not following through. So for example, if you have to call a client and you are debating putting that off, and obviously because it's less painful to not call the client and more painful to call the client. But let's say you associate more pain to not calling the client. Let's say you think about if you don't call the client, well, you may lose that relationship with that client, or you may lose goodwill with the client, or you would have to answer to your boss tomorrow, or even if you put it off today, the fact that you have to do it tomorrow is just one more thing that you have to do tomorrow, right? If you do it today, is one less thing you have to do tomorrow. So again, just stack up more painful associations to not calling the client. Chances are you'll call the client. So when you're aware of this dynamic, when you're aware of these forces that are going on, you have the ability to change these forces, and essentially you have the ability to eliminate procrastination from your habits. And let's say you don't have any valid reasons to essentially stack up more pain to not following through. So for example, if you didn't have enough painful associations to not following through in terms of calling the client, think about the research that I mentioned a little earlier in this video. Think about the effect that procrastination has on your psychology. Think about the effect it has on your esteem, your self-esteem, on your confidence, and more importantly, on your governance, right? Procrastination is sort of like cancer for your psychology. It starts to eat away at who you are. So if you start to think about things that way, you start to stack up negative associations to not following through, chances are you're going to follow through from this point on. So there you go, a principle, a strategy, a tactic that you can use to overcome procrastination starting today. Hey, AMIR MURADALI here. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, there's a few things you can do to make sure that we continue our relationship. First, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel to make sure that you're notified of when I release my next video. Second, you can join me on Facebook, where I share daily insights and inspiration to help you recharge and energize for your workday. And third, you can sign up for some free training on my website, where I offer some free training on how to fast track your career. So there you go. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, join me on Facebook, sign up for some free training. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.